Okay, so this is my outline for weeks 4 and 5. So I guess I'll just go through the notes that I took for the reading. The first reading was for chapter 4. The first chapter is chapter 4, Designing Effective Instruction. And a couple of the things that I wrote down were the importance of giving examples and storytelling. In another one of my classes, we also talked about the importance of sharing stories with an audience and how much that can capture their their thoughts and in their minds, so that they can get more involved in the discussion. And I was thinking about it in a way even with church. When you think about sacrament meeting, you get a lot more captured into what's going on when there are stories told instead of when there are lectures going on, or when the teacher just continues to speak, or when they continue just to read. Storytelling is a great way to teach, and I think especially with family life education. It's also a way that people can relate to you, and so it won't just be the leader or the teacher talking the entire time, but the audience can also relate and then share their own stories. Another thing that I thought was interesting from that chapter was the importance of asking questions, but not asking any question, asking questions asking good questions. What I mean by that is not having your own answer in your head and making it a guessing game. Elder Bednar came to my mission and taught that exact same principle, that teaching, or that asking questions shouldn't be a game, but it should be really to learn, so the teacher can learn, and also so that the audience can learn from themselves. The next chapter, chapter 5, was engaging an audience. I think these related a lot to each other, but one of the main things was to not be an intimidating teacher. And I think ways to do that would be through not lecturing as much, like I've already said, but to have open discussions and being open to the answers and the questions that the audience has. I really like when I have a teacher that will call on a student, and a student will ask a question, and they'll open up the audience to answer that student's question. I think that's a great way to teach. I also thought that it was important, the point to not just be a robot as a teacher, but to get to know the participants and to teach for their good, so that you can learn together with them. I think that really helps you not to be intimidating as a teacher, especially in something so fragile as the family. Teaching about the family can be, later in the other chapters, I think it was chapter 7, it talks about working with diverse audiences, and that's another thing that I'll touch on. In Teaching the Gospel book, the things that stood out to me, a few of the things were following the Spirit. And I think that although, in the gospel, the family is central to the plan. But I think in any situation, if it's gospel related, or, in a family life education seminar or workshop with the community, it's important to still follow the Spirit, so you can know exactly what the audience that you're speaking to needs to know and needs to hear. The Spirit knows them better than anyone else does. And so on top of that, I think being prepared is huge, is so important. Not only being prepared through writing down a list of the things you want to talk about and having the presentation open and all these things, but also by already being an example of the things that you're teaching, by praying and studying beforehand, and then trusting that the Lord and the Spirit will prompt you to what to say. The other thing on there that I thought was interesting was the point they made about how important it is to be in a good setting for the audience and for the entire workshop or seminar, that distractions won't occur and where the Spirit can be present. So then for week 5 in chapter 6, Teaching Skills and Tools in Family Life Education, I liked the point that was made about being a leader. making sure that there are lots of different things. I don't think that the leader has to be the person that speaks the whole time, because I think that makes up for a not very good lesson sometimes, because audience can't concentrate as well when there's only talking going on. But I think it also includes making sure that the leader keeps the topic, it keeps everything on the right topic, making sure that having educated responses to the things that the audience asks them, and also summarizing what other people are saying so that you can keep a flow within the workshop. Another thing that I liked was the point of using object lessons or media or games or activities. I think that the more the different with the different types of things used in a presentation or in a workshop, the more enjoyable it'll be for the audience and for the teacher. In Chapter 7, it talked about working with diverse audiences. And I think this is important in every single situation. If you're teaching, if you're a family life educator, or if you're teaching in church, or if you're going to present in a school, you need to know the age, the gender, even the ethnicities of all these different audiences, so that you can be aware of what the appropriate things are to say. Always, I think being prepared and thinking before you speak and being aware of your surroundings is extremely important. And then in the last part of the reading, Teaching the Gospel, pages 35 through 43, one of the main points I thought was really important was to think of what the audience needs and what will get their attention. I think lots of times as teachers, it's easy to not go off topic, but just go off of what we've written, instead of thinking of what the audience is needing in that time. Another thing that was really interesting to me was, it reminded me of my mission, how oftentimes we would ask a question and then just sit there in silence and wait for an answer. And although it can seem awkward, I think that's a great time for the Spirit to work and for our minds to work, so we can think of the examples that we want to share, or think of the response that we have. And the last thing was that what came to my mind was that the perfect example of a teacher is Christ. He used parables. He taught with love. He taught for the individual, and he asked good questions. Anyways, that's a summary of my outline.